The morning light came soft and grey through the tall windows of Ashcombe Hall. Dust drifted in the beams like small pieces of gold. The old stone floors were cold under thin slippers, and the smell of wood smoke and beeswax hung in every hallway. It was the sort of house that held its breath, waiting to see who would speak first. Vivienne Marlowe stood at the window of the small breakfast room. Her hands were folded in front of her. She watched the mist curl above the wet grass. Somewhere far off, a horse called out, and another answered. The sound made her chest feel tight in a way she did not understand. She had come to Ashcombe 3 weeks ago. She had come because her aunt had sent her, and her aunt had sent her because there was nowhere else. Her father was dead. Her mother was dead. The small house in Kent had been sold to pay the debts, and the last of her family had passed her along like a letter no one wanted to open. The Duke of Ashcombe had not wanted her either. He had made that clear on the first day. Vivienne remembered his words the way one remembers a burn. She had been standing in the great hall, her small trunk beside her feet, her bonnet still in her hands. The Duke had come down the stairs slowly. He had looked at her the way one might look at a piece of furniture that had been delivered to the wrong address. "So this is the girl," he had said. His voice was not loud. It did not need to be. "I was told she might be useful. I see now that I was misled. She looks as though a strong wind might carry her off." The housekeeper had stood beside him. 2 footmen had stood by the door. A maid had been polishing the banister and had stopped. Everyone had heard. Vivienne had not answered. She had lifted her chin the smallest bit. She had said, very softly, "Good afternoon, Your Grace." Then she had picked up her trunk herself, because no one had moved to take it. And she had followed the housekeeper up the stairs without looking back. That had been the insult. She had not forgotten it. She thought of it now as the mist lifted, and she felt again the cold weight of those words settle in her stomach. She had done nothing since to make him take them back. She had not asked him to. She had simply gotten on with her days. The breakfast-room door opened. The housekeeper came in, a thin woman named Mrs. Penhale, who had been at Ashcombe since before the Duke was born. She carried a small tray with tea and 1 piece of toast. "Miss Marlowe, you are up early again," Mrs. Penhale said. "I sleep poorly," Vivienne said. She did not turn from the window. "The Duke rides out at 7:30. He said you were not to be in the yard." "I have never been in the yard, Mrs. Penhale, I know that. I am telling you what he said." Vivienne turned then. Her eyes were the colour of grey water. Her hair was pulled back plain and simple, the way a girl with no maid must wear it. She was not beautiful in the way that made men stop in the road. She was made of quieter things. Straight shoulders, a steady mouth, hands that did not shake. "Thank you," she said. "I will remember." Mrs. Penhale set the tray down. She looked at Vivienne for a moment longer than was strictly needed. Then she went out. Vivienne drank the tea slowly. It was hot and bitter, and it tasted like something real. The toast she ate in small bites. She had learned, at her aunt's house, to eat carefully. Food that was given grudgingly must be eaten as though it did not matter. That way no one could take pleasure in giving less. When she finished, she carried the tray to the door herself. A maid came to take it. Vivienne thanked her by name. The maid, whose name was Betsy, blushed. Nobody at Ashcombe was often thanked. Vivienne walked down the long hallway to the small side door that led to the kitchen garden. She had been told she might walk in the kitchen garden. She had not been told she might walk anywhere else. So she walked in the kitchen garden every morning, back and forth between the rows of cabbage and thyme, and she counted her steps. 320 from the door to the wall. 320 back. Some mornings she did it 4 times. Some mornings 6. Today she did it 3. Because a sound stopped her. It was a soft sound, not loud. A kind of low breath, half a snort, half a sigh. It came from beyond the low wall at the far end of the garden. Beyond that wall was the paddock. Vivienne knew about the paddock. Everyone at Ashcombe knew. The paddock held the Duke's grey mare, and the Duke's grey mare was famous in 3 counties for being impossible. She had killed 1 groom. She had broken the arm of another. She would let no one near her but the Duke himself, and even he, they said, wore thick gloves and kept a hand near his crop when he mounted her. Vivienne had not gone to the paddock. She had been told not to. But the sound came again, low, almost a small cry. It did not sound angry. It sounded tired. Vivienne stood very still. She looked at the wall. She looked back at the house. The house was quiet. The mist had not yet fully burned off, and the windows were dark eyes that did not seem to be watching. She walked to the wall. The wall was low, only up to her waist. On the other side, in the corner nearest the wall, stood the grey mare. Her coat was the colour of storm clouds and old iron. Her mane was long and rough. She held her head down. Her one visible eye was half closed. She was not moving. Vivienne stayed where she was. She did not lean on the wall. She did not speak. She simply stood, and she watched. And she let the mare know she was there without making any demand. The mare did not lift her head. But her ear turned. One ear, just the smallest twitch, and then still again. Vivienne stayed for perhaps 10 minutes. Then she turned and walked back to the house. She did not look behind her. That evening she sat by the window in her small room. Her room was on the 3rd floor, above the servants' hall, in a corner where the roof sloped down. She had a bed, a chair, a small table with a candle, and a wash basin. There was one square window that looked out over the stable yard. She could see from her window the paddock in the distance. She sat with a book on her lap, but she did not read. She watched the shape of the mare in the fading light. The mare stood in the same corner. She had not moved. There was a groom in the yard, a young man with red hair, and he was carrying a bucket to the paddock. Vivienne watched him. He opened the gate. He walked in slowly. He set the bucket down 5 paces from the mare. The mare's head came up. Her ears went back. She did not charge. She did not have to. The groom stepped back at once, and he did not turn until he was out of the paddock. He shut the gate carefully behind him. He looked shaken. Vivienne sat back in her chair. She thought about the mare's low sigh that morning. She thought about the way the mare had stood, head down, one ear twitching, like a creature that had grown too tired to be angry any more. She blew out her candle and went to bed. She dreamed of grey water, and of a horse whose eye was full of something no one had bothered to name. The next morning she went to the kitchen garden again. She walked her 320 steps. On the 4th pass she stopped at the low wall. The mare was still in the corner. Vivienne saw her. Vivienne did not lean on the wall. She simply stood. The mist was thinner today, and she could see the mare's ribs where the coat had thinned. She could see the small scab on the mare's shoulder, where a rein or a spur had caught her once. She could see the way the mare's near hind leg was cocked, the hoof only just brushing the ground, as if standing on it was more work than the mare had left in her. Vivienne felt the sting of tears in her eyes and pushed it down. She had not cried at her father's grave. She had not cried when her aunt had told her to pack her trunk. She was not going to cry over a horse in a strange man's paddock. She stood for a long time. The mare's ear turned toward her. Twice, the next morning, it rained. The kitchen garden was wet, and the paths ran with brown water. Vivienne went out anyway. She wore an old cloak with a hood that had once been her mother's. The wool smelled of lavender and old wood, and the smell was one of the few things left in her life that felt like it belonged to her. She walked her steps in the rain. Her slippers were soaked. She did not care. When she stopped at the low wall, the mare was already looking at her, not staring. Looking, her head was slightly raised. Her ears were forward. Vivienne stood in the rain. Water ran down her face. Her breath came out in a small pale cloud. "Hello," she said. She said it so softly that the wind almost took it. The mare's ear flicked. Vivienne did not stay long. Her hands were going numb. She turned and walked back to the house. She dried herself by the small fire in her room and did not tell anyone where she had been. That afternoon she was called to the drawing room. She had never been called to the drawing room before. In her 3 weeks at Ashcombe, she had eaten alone, walked alone, and spent her evenings alone. She had begun to think of herself as a piece of the house, like the tall clock on the landing, or the empty chair by the west window, noticed only when someone bumped into it. Mrs. Penhale led her down. The Duke was standing by the fireplace. He was not alone. There was a woman with him. She was tall. She was beautiful in the polished way that expensive things are beautiful. Her hair was the color of new copper. She wore a dress of dark green silk that caught the firelight, and her earrings caught the light too, and everything about her caught the light except her eyes, which were flat and pale, and did not. The Duke turned when Vivian entered. He was a big man. His shoulders were broad. His hair was dark, cut close, and there was grey at the temples, though he could not have been more than 35. His eyes were a strange, deep hazel, the colour of tea gone cold. He did not smile. "Miss Marlowe," he said, "this is Lady Corvin, my cousin's widow. She is staying with us for a week." Lady Corvin turned. Her mouth did a small thing that was not quite a smile. "So this is the little cousin," she said, "the one you took in out of charity." Vivienne kept her hands folded. "I am not a cousin, Lady Corvin. I am a distant connection on the Duke's mother's side, and I was not taken in out of charity. My aunt sent me to be useful." "Useful?" Lady Corvin laughed. It was a short sound. "In what way exactly?" Vivienne did not answer. She looked at the Duke instead. He had told her, on that first day, that she was not useful. He had said it in front of the servants. He had said it in this same voice he used now, quiet, hard, not needing to be loud. He did not speak. Lady Corvin turned to him. "Truly, Ashcombe, you are too kind. Every draughty corner of this house seems to have a little poor relation tucked in it. I do not know how you manage it." The Duke's jaw shifted. "Miss Marlowe, you may go." Vivienne curtsied. She turned to leave. At the door, Lady Corvin's voice reached her one more time. It was soft, but it carried. It was meant to carry. "Poor thing," Lady Corvin said. "She has the face of a girl who has never been chosen for anything in her life, not even by a governess post, apparently. One does wonder what her aunt was trying to be rid of." Vivienne stopped in the doorway. Her hand was on the frame. The wood was smooth and cool under her fingers. She could hear the fire in the fireplace. She could hear the small tick of a clock. She could hear her own breath. She did not turn around. She did not answer. She walked out of the room, and she walked up the stairs, and she walked to her small room on the 3rd floor, and she closed the door. She sat on the edge of the bed. She put her hands in her lap. She looked at them. They did not shake. That was something. She did not cry. She had promised herself that she would not cry in this house. She had made the promise on the first day, standing in the great hall with her small trunk at her feet, and she had kept it, and she would keep it. But there was a heat behind her eyes, and a burning in her throat, and something in her chest that felt like a small hard stone. She thought of the mare in the paddock. She thought of the mare's ear flicking when she had said hello. She thought of the way the mare's ribs showed, and the way her head hung down. She stood up. She put on her cloak. She walked back down the stairs, out through the kitchen, past the vegetable garden, over the low wall. She did not think about what she was doing. She thought about that later. She only knew, in that moment, that she could not sit in that room any longer with Lady Corvin's voice still in her ears. She stepped into the paddock. The gate creaked. The mare's head came up at once. Vivienne closed the gate behind her. She stood with her back to it. She did not walk forward. She did not speak. The mare stared at her. The mare's nostrils flared. One front hoof struck the ground. Vivienne felt the small vibration through her wet slippers. She waited. The mare took one step forward. Vivienne did not move. The mare stopped. She swung her head from side to side. Her mane hung heavy with the rain that had come earlier. Vivienne stood very still. She thought of her mother's voice, long ago, telling her about a bird that had come to their kitchen window. Her mother had said, "You do not chase what is afraid. You wait. You let it decide." The mare took another step. And another. Vivienne's heart was beating in a strange, slow way. She could smell the mare now, the warm, sharp smell of horse, of wet hair and old sweat and hay. She could smell the earth of the paddock and the far-off smoke from the house. She could feel the cold air on her face and the rough stone of the gatepost pressing into her back. The mare stopped 3 paces away. She lowered her head. Vivienne saw the eye then, close up, the one dark liquid eye, and there was something in it that made her chest feel too small. The mare took one more step. She was near enough now that Vivienne could have touched her, if she had lifted her arm. Vivienne did not lift her arm. The mare came the last step, and then, slowly, as though she were doing something she had not done in a very long time, the mare lowered her head and rested it on Vivienne's shoulder. Vivienne did not move. The weight of the mare's head was heavy. It was warm. The mare's breath came out in slow, tired huffs against Vivienne's cloak. The mare's mane fell across Vivienne's arm, damp and rough and smelling of rain. Vivienne closed her eyes. She stood in the wet paddock, with the great grey head of the impossible horse resting on her shoulder, and she felt, for the first time since her mother died, that she was not alone. She did not know how long she stood there. It might have been a minute. It might have been 10. She only knew that at some point she became aware of a sound behind her, near the far gate of the paddock, and she opened her eyes. The Duke was there. He stood at the far gate. He had come around from the stables. His coat was dark with rain. His face was pale. He was not moving. Vivienne did not move either. She could not. The mare's head was still on her shoulder. The Duke's eyes were on the mare. Then they were on Vivienne. Then on the mare again. His mouth opened and closed and opened again. "Don't move," he said very quietly. "I was not going to," Vivienne said, just as quietly. The mare shifted. Her ear turned back toward the Duke. She did not lift her head from Vivienne's shoulder, but her body tensed. Vivienne felt it, the way a person tenses when they have been hurt by someone whose voice they know. Vivienne turned her own head, very slowly, and put her cheek against the mare's cheek. She did not say anything. But she thought, with all of her, "You are all right. I am here. You are all right." The mare's body eased. The tension went out of her. She sighed, the same low, tired sigh Vivienne had heard from the garden. The Duke stood at the far gate. He watched. He did not come closer. After a time, the mare lifted her head. She did it slowly. She looked at Vivienne. She blew warm breath against Vivienne's face, and the breath smelled of hay and something sweet. And then the mare turned and walked away, slowly, toward the small shed at the back of the paddock. Vivienne watched her go. She turned then to the gate. She walked to it. She let herself out. She shut it behind her, carefully, with the same care she had shut every door she had ever shut in this house. The Duke walked around to meet her. He stopped a few paces away. "Miss Marlowe." His voice was not the same voice he had used in the drawing room. It was quieter. It was uncertain, in a way she had not heard from him before. "Your Grace." She curtsied. Water ran down her face. She did not know if it was rain or something else. She hoped it was rain. "That horse," he said. He stopped. He tried again. "That horse has not let anyone touch her in 2 years. She did not let me touch her," Vivienne said. "She touched me." He looked at her. He said nothing. "I should go inside," she said. "I am wet. Lady Corvin will wonder where I am." She saw something move in his face at the name. She could not name what it was. "Yes," he said. "Yes, go inside." She curtsied again. She walked past him. She did not look at him. She walked back through the kitchen garden. She walked up the servants' stair. She walked to her small room. She closed the door. Then, only then, she sat on the floor with her back against the door and let herself shake, silently, for a long time. Not because she was afraid, not because she was hurt, because a horse that had killed a groom had chosen her, and she did not know what it meant, only that it felt, in some strange way, like a promise. She was called to dinner that night. She had not been called to dinner in 3 weeks. She thought at first the maid must be mistaken, but the maid, Betsy, was firm. "His Grace said you were to come, miss," he said it particular. Vivienne had one good dress. It was grey wool, plain, with a small white collar. It had been her mother's, cut down. She put it on. She brushed her hair and pinned it up. She looked at herself in the small square of mirror above the wash basin. She looked pale. Her eyes were too large in her face. She lifted her chin and went down. The dining room at Ashcombe was long. The table was long. The candles were many. The Duke sat at the head. Lady Corvin sat at his right. There was a place laid at his left. It was for her. Vivienne walked the length of the room. She felt every step in the soft slippers she wore. She reached the chair. A footman drew it back for her. She sat. Lady Corvin's eyes were on her at once. "Miss Marlowe, how unexpected. I did not know you were joining us tonight." "His Grace was kind enough to include me," Vivienne said. She kept her voice soft. "How very kind of him. Ashcombe, you are full of surprises this evening." The Duke did not answer. He picked up his glass. He set it down. He looked at Vivienne. He looked at his plate. The soup was brought. Vivienne ate carefully. The soup was good. It tasted of chicken and thyme and something warm she could not name. She had not eaten anything so good in 3 weeks. She did not let this show on her face. Lady Corvin talked. She talked of the season in London, of a ball she had attended, of a duchess she had been particular friends with. Every so often she brought her attention back to Vivienne. "Miss Marlowe, you must find the country dull after your life in Kent, was it?" "I find it peaceful." "Peaceful. How charming." "I always feel that people who use the word peaceful mean something else entirely. Do you not think so, Ashcombe?" The Duke did not answer. "Perhaps you mean," Lady Corvin went on, "that in the country you are less noticed. That must be a comfort, for a girl who has not been fortunate in her attentions." Vivienne set her spoon down. She looked at Lady Corvin. She did not speak. Lady Corvin smiled. "Oh, Miss Marlowe, do not look so wounded. I only mean that some girls bloom in the country, others simply fade there. One can never tell in advance which is which." The room was quiet. A footman shifted at the sideboard. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the walls a mouse ran. The Duke set down his own spoon. He looked at Lady Corvin. He looked at her for a long moment without speaking. Lady Corvin's smile faltered. "Isolde," the Duke said. His voice was very even. "You will speak to Miss Marlowe with courtesy while you are under my roof, or you will not sit at my table." The room went so quiet Vivienne could hear the candles. Lady Corvin's face changed. 2 red spots appeared on her cheeks. "Ashcombe, I hardly think. I do not care what you think, Isolde. I care what you say. You will say it with courtesy, or you will not say it here." Lady Corvin set down her fork. She looked at her plate. She looked at Vivienne. Her lips pressed together. "Of course," she said. "I meant no harm. Then you should not be understood to have caused any." He turned to the footman. "The next course, please." The next course was brought. The meal went on. Lady Corvin did not speak much after that. When she spoke of the weather. Vivienne did not look at the Duke. She did not know what her face would show if she did. She ate her food carefully. She thought about the mare's head on her shoulder. She thought about the weight of it. When dinner ended, Vivienne rose. She curtsied. She said good night to the Duke and to Lady Corvin. She walked from the room. At the door she paused, though she did not mean to. She looked back. Just once. The Duke was watching her. His hand was on his glass. His face was not smiling. But there was something in it that she could not read, and it followed her all the way up the stairs. The next morning she went to the paddock again. She did not walk in the garden first. She walked straight to the paddock and stood at the wall. The mare was already looking. When Vivienne climbed over, the gate was still forbidden, but she had already broken that rule once. The mare walked to her. Not a hesitation. Not a pause. The grey mare walked across the wet paddock as though she had been waiting. She stopped in front of Vivienne. She lowered her head. She rested it again on Vivienne's shoulder. This time it was familiar. This time Vivienne raised a hand, slowly, and put it on the mare's neck. The mare's coat was rough. It was cold on top and warm underneath. Vivienne felt the mare's breath against her ear. She felt the mare's weight. "I do not know your name," she whispered. They should have given you a proper one. The mare's ear turned. I shall call you Silver then, because that is what you are, not grey. Silver. The mare made a small sound. Not quite a whicker, a low, almost approving hum. Vivienne laughed. It surprised her. It was a small laugh, cracked at the edges. But it was a laugh, and she had not made one in a very long time. She stood with the mare for perhaps a quarter of an hour. She did not see the Duke that morning. But she knew. Because Mrs. Penhale told her later that he had watched from the window of his study. Days went on. Lady Corvin's week became a fortnight. She had extended her stay. She did it with sweet smiles and pointed remarks about how much she was needed for advice on the running of the household. The Duke had not sent her away, though Vivienne saw, in small signs, that he wanted to. Vivienne went to the paddock every morning. Silver waited for her. The mare's ribs began to fill out. She ate the food the grooms brought, food that had been left uneaten before Vivienne came. She let Vivienne brush her mane, though only Vivienne. She let Vivienne pick out her hooves, though only Vivienne. When any groom came near the gate, she pinned her ears back and swung her head. And the groom went away. The Duke came sometimes to the paddock fence. He stood at a distance. He watched. He did not try to enter. He did not speak much to Vivienne when he did. But he came, and after some days Vivienne began to feel his presence at the fence, the way one feels the sun coming through a window one has been sitting near for a long time. One morning he spoke. "Miss Marlowe, Your Grace, I would ask you something." "Yes?" He was silent for a moment. He was looking at Silver, not at Vivienne. "Why does she come to you?" Vivienne considered the question. She stroked Silver's neck. Silver's ear was turned toward the Duke, but not in warning. "Just listening." "I do not know," Vivienne said. "I did not do anything. I only stood. Others have stood." "Perhaps," Vivienne said. "They were standing because they wanted her to come to them. I was standing because I did not know where else to go." The Duke was quiet for a long time after that. Then he said, "Miss Marlowe, I owe you an apology." Vivienne's hand paused on Silver's neck. She turned. She looked at him. "On the day you arrived," he said. His voice was low. "I said something that was not kind. I said it in front of the servants. I have thought of it since. I ask your pardon." Vivienne looked at him. She did not answer at once. He had said, a strong wind might carry her off. He had said, "I see now that I was misled." He had said it in front of Mrs. Penhale, and 2 footmen, and a maid who had been polishing the banister. "You do not owe me an apology, Your Grace," she said finally. "But I thank you for the offer of one." His eyes were on her face. "That is not the same as accepting it." "No," she said. "It is not." He nodded. "Once, slowly, I understand." He did not press. He turned and walked back toward the house. Silver watched him go. That afternoon Vivienne learned something. She was in the still room, helping the housekeeper sort dried herbs. Mrs. Penhale had begun asking Vivienne to help her. Small things at first, but more each week. Vivienne suspected the Duke had told her to find things for Vivienne to do. Vivienne did not mind. It gave her hands work, and hands with work were happier than hands without. Mrs. Penhale was tying a bundle of lavender. She spoke without looking up. "Miss, has anyone told you about young Tobias? The stable boy? The red-haired one? Yes, well, he was to be turned off last week." Vivienne looked up. "Turned off? Why?" "He broke a bridle. A costly one. Made from Spanish leather. His Grace's own bridle, if you please. The head groom said it was carelessness. Wanted the boy gone. And? His Grace overruled him, kept the boy on, paid for a new bridle himself and said no more about it. The head groom was not pleased. But he said no more either. Vivienne kept her eyes on the herbs. Is Tobias a good worker? Aye, careful most days. But his mother is ill, and there are 5 little ones at home, and he had not slept for 3 nights. That was why he was clumsy. His Grace found out. I do not know how. He does not mention such things. But he sent a doctor to the mother, quiet-like, out of his own purse. The boy does not know. Only the doctor and I know. And now you. His Grace would not thank me for telling you. Vivienne's hand had stopped moving. Why did you tell me then, Mrs. Penhale? The housekeeper looked up. Her eyes were not warm exactly, but they were not cold either. Because you did not ask him to apologize for what he said to you on the first day, miss, and he did anyway. And I have known His Grace since he was 7 years old, and I have never known him to apologize to anyone. Not for anything. Not once. And I thought you should know what sort of man he is before you decide what to do with the apology. Vivienne did not answer for a long moment. Then she said, "Thank you, Mrs. Penhale. You are welcome, miss." They finished the lavender in silence. That night, in her small room, Vivienne sat by her candle and did not read. She thought about the Duke. She thought about the boy Tobias and the mother and the doctor. She thought about a man who paid for a new bridle out of his own purse and did not mention it. She thought about Silver and the way the Mare had come to her that first day, walking across the wet paddock as though she had been waiting. Perhaps, Vivienne thought, some creatures know things about people that people do not know about themselves. Perhaps Silver had known something about the Duke that others had not seen, that the man who owned her, who was hard and cold and had said cruel things, was not only that there was something underneath. Perhaps Silver had known something about Vivienne too, something Vivienne herself had not known, that she was not fragile, that she was not something a strong wind could carry off, that she was, in fact, someone who could stand still while a great damaged animal put its head on her shoulder, and not flinch, and not run, and not require anything in return. She blew out the candle. She slept. In the morning she went to the paddock. Silver was waiting. Lady Corvin stayed on. She had now been at Ashcombe for nearly 3 weeks. She had begun to speak of the house as if she had a claim to it. She had made a point, one evening at dinner, of describing what she would do with the west drawing-room if it were mine to arrange. She had said this with a smile at the Duke. The Duke had said nothing. Vivienne had learned, by asking Mrs. Penhale a careful question, that Lady Corvin had once been expected to marry the Duke. There had been an understanding, 7 years ago, before he inherited. Then he had inherited, and something had happened, and Lady Corvin had married his cousin instead. The cousin had died 2 years back. Lady Corvin had been in mourning. Now the mourning was over, and Lady Corvin had come to visit her dear late husband's dear cousin, the Duke. "She wants him back," Mrs. Penhale said. It was the only opinion she offered on the matter. The next day was the day of the assembly at the town of Ash Green, 4 miles off. It was the country assembly held once a season in the ballroom above the inn. Every family of any consequence in the neighbourhood attended. Lady Corvin had been speaking of it for a week. "Ashcombe, you must attend. You have not been seen at an assembly in years. People will talk. People always talk. Yes, but you will not always be able to ignore what they say. And I would so like to be seen there with you. It has been so long. It would be a comfort to me, a comfort in my grief." The Duke did not answer at first. Then he said, "If I attend, Miss Marlowe will attend also." Lady Corvin's fork paused. "Miss Marlowe? Yes, but, Ashcombe, has she anything to wear?" "That will be arranged." Vivienne was sitting at the table when this was said. She looked at her plate. She said nothing. She was measured that afternoon by a woman brought from the town. The dress arrived 2 days later. It was pale silver-grey silk, the colour of a certain horse's coat. It had a plain neckline and small sleeves. It was not showy. It was made for her. Vivienne stood in front of the mirror in her small room, in the dress, and she did not know the woman looking back. Her hair had been dressed by Mrs. Penhale herself. She was pale, still, but not the pale of someone drowning. The pale of someone standing at a window, watching the sun come up. The carriage was ready at 8. The assembly rooms were warm and loud. The smell of hot wax and perfume and people pressed close together met them at the door. Music played from the far end, a small band, 3 fiddles and a pianoforte. The floor was chalked. Candles guttered in every sconce. Every head turned when the Duke came in. He did not attend assemblies. He had not been seen at one in 5 years, since his father died. His presence sent a stir through the room like a wind through wheat. Lady Corvin walked beside him. Her hand was on his arm. She was in bright green silk with pearls around her throat. She was smiling. Vivienne came behind. She had not taken his other arm. He had not offered it. She walked at his shoulder like a shadow, and every eye that turned to the Duke and then to Lady Corvin passed over Vivienne without stopping. She did not mind. She was used to it. She held her hands folded in front of her. She watched the room the way she had watched the first room, 3 weeks ago at Ashcombe, from a small distance, not needing to be seen. Introductions were made. Ladies curtsied to the Duke. Gentlemen bowed. Lady Corvin smiled and smiled. The Duke was polite. He said little. Then the country dance began, and the first set was called, and Lady Corvin put her hand on the Duke's arm. "You will dance with me, Ashcombe, for old time's sake." The Duke did not move. "Not this set, Isolde. Oh, come now, not this set." He said it clearly. He said it in the voice he had used at dinner. Lady Corvin's hand slipped from his arm. Her smile did not slip, but it thinned. The Duke turned. He turned to Vivienne. He did not speak. He held out his hand. The room did not go silent, not yet. The music was still playing, the dancers still forming. But those nearest to them saw, and those near them told those next to them, and in 3 seconds the wave of it had crossed the room. Vivienne looked at his hand. She looked at his face. His face was the same face it always was, hard, set, but his eyes were on hers, and there was something in his eyes that she had not seen there before. It was not asking. It was not commanding. It was offering, as though he had held something out and would hold it out for however long she needed, and would not be angry if she did not take it. She put her hand in his. The music began. He led her onto the floor. He danced well. He did not smile as he danced. He was not the kind of man who smiled easily. But his hand on her back was steady, and his hand on hers was warm, and when the figure of the dance turned them so that they faced one another, he looked at her, and only at her, as though there was no one else in the room. Vivienne kept her eyes on his shoulder for the first turn. On the second turn she looked up. She met his eyes. She did not look away. They danced 2 sets together. Lady Corvin did not dance. She stood near the wall. She smiled when spoken to. She sipped her lemonade. She watched. At the end of the second set, the Duke led Vivienne back to the edge of the floor. He bowed. "Miss Marlowe." "Thank you." "Your Grace." He did not leave her side. He stood beside her. Others came to be introduced. He introduced her as Miss Marlowe, of Kent, a connection of his family. He did not say distant. He did not say poor relation. He said Miss Marlowe, and each person who came to be introduced looked at her as though they had underestimated her, and revised their estimate on the spot. Then Lady Corvin came. She came slowly. She smiled as she approached. Her pearls caught the candlelight. She had a fresh glass of lemonade in her hand. "Miss Marlowe," she said. Her voice was soft. It was the voice she had used in the drawing-room, the voice meant to carry. "How very well you dance." One would hardly have thought it. "I said to Lady Peverell just now, you would not believe it, Ashcombe. But I said, one can dress a country mouse in silver silk, but she is still a country mouse, and the mice do so try, do they not, when they are given a little bit of light." The people around them heard. It was a large enough circle that all of them heard. Lady Peverell, standing 3 paces off, turned red. 2 young ladies looked at their fans. Vivienne did not move. She did not answer. She did not curtsy. She did not turn away. She only looked at Lady Corvin, quietly, with the same grey water eyes she had turned on the Duke that first day. She looked at her for one long moment, and then, still without speaking, she took her hand from the Duke's arm. She had not realized he had drawn her arm through his after the second set, and she went to Lady Corvin, and she said, in a voice pitched only for the 2 of them but somehow heard by all, "Lady Corvin, you have dropped your glove." She stooped. There was no glove on the floor, but Vivienne stooped and picked up nothing, and rose and held out her closed hand as though she were returning something. Lady Corvin stared. "That," Vivienne said, softly, "was the last piece of grace you had with you tonight. I fear it slipped from your fingers when you spoke. Please, take it back." She held out her empty hand. Lady Corvin's face went white. For a moment, no one breathed. For a moment, the whole ballroom seemed to hold. And then Vivienne turned, quietly, without another word, and walked back to where the Duke stood. The Duke's face, for the first time in the 3 weeks she had known him, moved. It was not a smile. It was something under a smile. It was the crack of light before dawn. He held out his arm again. She took it, and the ballroom, which had gone silent in a way ballrooms rarely do, began to breathe again. Someone laughed, a small nervous laugh from a young woman near the door. Then another. Then Lady Peveril, quite deliberately, laughed also. And the whispers began, not against Vivienne, but against Lady Corvin. That was the moment Vivienne understood that Lady Corvin had made enemies for many years in this room, and had not known it, because everyone had always smiled. The Duke drew Vivienne aside. "Miss Marlowe," he said, and his voice was low. "That was beautifully done. It was rude of me, Your Grace. It was not." "It was. Perhaps," he said, "but it was very much needed." She looked at him. "Is she still to stay at Ashcombe?" "She will be gone tomorrow," he said. "That, I promise you, will be arranged." And it was. Lady Corvin left the next morning. Her carriage came at 9. She did not come down to say goodbye. Her maid came to fetch her trunks, and her trunks were carried down, and her carriage rolled away down the drive, and the great front door of Ashcombe closed behind her, and the house, Vivienne felt it, let out a long breath. That morning Vivienne went to the paddock. Silver was there. Silver came to her and rested her head on Vivienne's shoulder, and stayed there a long time. The Duke came to the fence. Vivienne saw him but did not turn. "May I come in?" he asked. Vivienne considered. Then she said, slowly. He came in slowly. He shut the gate behind him. He walked toward them, one careful step at a time. Silver's ears did not go back. Her body did not tense. She only turned her one visible eye toward him and watched. He stopped an arm's length away. "May I?" he asked. Not of Vivienne, of Silver. He put his hand out, palm up, low, slow. Silver looked at his hand. She looked at Vivienne. She looked at his hand again. She stretched her neck. She touched her nose to his palm. The Duke breathed out. Vivienne saw the breath leave him. His shoulders eased. It was the first time she had seen him not braced against something. "Thank you," he said, very quietly. He said it to Silver. Then he said it to Vivienne. "Thank you." Vivienne did not answer at once. She stroked Silver's neck. Silver's mane was warm now in the morning sun. The mist had lifted. The paddock smelled of wet grass and sweet hay and something clean. "Your Grace," she said. "May I ask you something?" "Anything. When you spoke to me, that first day, in the great hall, you said what you said, in front of the servants." She did not look at him. She kept her eyes on Silver's mane. Why? He was quiet for a long time. Silver breathed against Vivienne's cheek. "Because," the Duke said finally, "I had been told to expect a fortune hunter." That was what her letter said. "Whose letter?" "Your aunt's." Vivienne turned her head then. She looked at him. "My aunt sent a letter. She sent 2. The first, some months ago, offered you to me. Not in those words. In words very close to those words. She told me you were a girl of quality with no dowry, that I could make of you what I wished, and that she would be much obliged if I would take you off her hands." I did not answer. I threw the letter into the fire. Vivienne's hand had stilled on Silver's neck. She listened. "The second letter came a fortnight before you arrived. It said that you were coming anyway, that she was sending you, that it would be understood by all as a family visit, but that she trusted I would understand her meaning. She said also," his mouth tightened, "she said also that you were not to be trusted, that you had a way of making men feel sorry for you, and that I should not be taken in." Vivienne felt the blood leave her face. I did not believe her, the Duke said. But I did not disbelieve her. I had been used, badly, 7 years ago, by a woman who came into this house looking sorry for herself. I made a decision then that I would not be used again. When you arrived, I looked at you, and I saw a small pale girl who had been shipped like a parcel, and I did not know what she was. I did not know if she was what her aunt said, or what her aunt was pretending she was. So I said something cruel, to see what you would do, to test me. Yes, she looked at him. His eyes were on Silver. I have been ashamed of that morning every day since, he said. Every day of the 3 weeks you have been in my house. I watched you carry your own trunk up the stairs. I watched you speak politely to my housekeeper. I watched you not once ask for anything. I watched you walk in the kitchen garden every morning because you thought you were not allowed to walk anywhere else. And I said nothing, because I did not know how to say anything, because a man who has been cruel does not always know how to stop being cruel without seeming to want something in return. Vivienne did not speak. Then I saw you at the paddock, he said. The first day, when you stood at the low wall and did not speak and did not move. I saw you from the study window, and I saw Silver. I saw her ear turn. I have been trying for 2 years to get that ear to turn. I have tried everything. And you stood there, in the rain, and did nothing, and her ear turned. I did not know you were watching. I know. That is why I was watching. To see what you did when you thought no one saw. Vivienne looked down at Silver. Silver looked up at her. And then, the Duke said, and his voice had gone very quiet, then I came around the corner and I saw her put her head on your shoulder. And I understood what a fool I had been. Because Silver does not choose kindly. She does not choose because she is asked. She chooses because she sees. And she saw you. Vivienne felt something rise in her throat and pushed it down. Not the burning of tears. Something warmer. Something more like relief. Your Grace, she said. I do not know what to say. You do not have to say anything, Miss Marlowe. I am not asking you for anything. I only wanted you to know why. You asked me the day at the fence why she came to you. I do not know why. But I know that she did. And I know that from the day she did, I stopped being able to look at you the way I looked at you on that first morning. I have been trying every day since to look at you the way you deserve to be looked at. I have not always managed. I am still learning. Silver shifted. She stepped 1 pace forward, until she stood between them, her great grey head between them like a witness. You do not owe me an apology, Vivienne said, but, this time, I will accept it, and I thank you for it. He looked at her. Thank you, he said. It was so simple. And yet, they stood in the paddock for a while longer. Silver stayed between them. The sun was fully up now. The birds were loud in the trees beyond the paddock wall. Then the Duke said, Miss Marlowe, may I ask something more? Yes, would you take a walk with me this afternoon? In the garden. The real garden, not the kitchen garden. The rose garden, on the south side. It has been neglected. I have been meaning to have it seen to. I thought you might have an opinion. Vivienne thought about the rose garden. She had not been in the rose garden. She had not known there was a rose garden. Yes, she said, I would like that very much. He nodded. He did not smile, but something in his mouth changed, and she saw the man his mother must have known, before he had learned to guard everything. They walked in the rose garden that afternoon. The roses were half wild. Old canes bent to the ground. There were beetles in the leaves, and a fox lived under the far hedge. Vivienne walked slowly and touched a bloom here and there, and spoke of what could be done, and the Duke listened. They walked again the next day, and the day after. The autumn came. The leaves turned. The mornings grew cold. Silver's coat grew thick and shining. Vivienne no longer had to walk to the paddock in a soaked cloak. The Duke had given her a proper riding coat, and boots that fit, and had told her quite calmly that Silver was hers. She was never mine, Miss Marlowe. I bought her. I fed her. I housed her. But she was never mine. She was waiting. She was waiting for you. Vivienne had wept then. Only once. Only a little. He had not looked away. He had held out a handkerchief, and she had taken it, and he had waited until she was done. He had not tried to touch her. The weeks became months. They rode together in the mornings. Silva had never let anyone else on her back, but she let Vivienne, once Vivienne was ready, and she carried her lightly, as though she had been carrying her all her life. The Duke rode a great black gelding beside them. They rode over the hills of Ashcombe, and Vivienne learned the names of every field. He came to her one evening in the library. She had begun to spend her evenings there. He had told her all the books were hers to read. She had chosen one, a book of poetry, small and old, with her fingers marking a page. He came in quietly. She looked up. "Miss Marlowe," he said, "there is something I would say. May I sit?" She nodded. He sat in the chair, across from her. The fire was low. The room smelled of wood smoke and paper. "It has been," he said, 4 months since you came to Ashcombe. I would speak to you of something. Not of a promise. Not yet. Only of an intention. If you will hear it, I will hear it." He was quiet for a moment. He looked at his hands. Then, at her face. "I am not a man who has ever been easy to love. I have not deserved to be loved. I do not know if I deserve it now, but I have come to a decision, and I would tell it to you honestly, because I do not want you to be in doubt about it. I have decided that I love you." Vivienne did not move. "I am telling you because I owe you honesty. I am not asking you for anything. You have every right to take your time. You have every right to say no. I have been unkind to you, and I have been slow to be kind, and I know that these things do not go away because a man makes a speech in a library. I only wanted you to know, so that when I look at you across a room, you know what it is, so that when I do things for you, and do not speak of them, you know why. I did not want you to wonder any more." Vivienne looked at him. Her heart was quiet. She had known, she thought, for some weeks, perhaps for longer. She had known since the ballroom, perhaps. She had known since the morning at the fence when he had asked, "May I come in?" and had come in slowly, as she asked, and had waited to be allowed. "Your Grace," she said. "Callum," he said. "My name is Callum. I do not think you have ever said it." "Callum," she said. She tried it. It fit in her mouth. "Callum." He waited. "I have been thinking, these past weeks, about what love is. I did not think I would ever have cause to think about it. I thought it was for other people." She looked into the fire. "I think that love is when someone sees you when you did not know you were being seen, and chooses you when there was no reason they had to, and says, quietly, the true thing, when a lie would be easier." She looked at him. "Yes," she said. "I love you also." He did not move. He was not the kind of man who lunged at things. He sat where he was. He looked at her. And after a moment, a long moment, one of the slow ones, when the room seems to breathe and the candles seem not to flicker, he reached across the small distance between them. He took her hand. He raised it. He put his forehead against her knuckles, quietly, for the space of a breath. Then he lowered it. He held it. "Vivienne," he said. He had never used her name before. "Thank you." She did not answer. She only pressed his hand. It was enough. They were married in the spring in the small chapel at Ashcombe. Silva was in the paddock the day of the wedding. Vivienne went to her, in her white dress, before the ceremony. Silva came across the paddock in the morning light and rested her head on Vivienne's shoulder, and stood there while Vivienne stroked her mane and whispered to her. Mrs. Penhale watched from the yard. She was crying, though she would deny it later. The little stable boy Tobias watched too. His mother had recovered. He did not know how, or why, or by whose hand. He only knew that his mother was well, and that he still had his position, and that the girl in the white dress was the girl who had come to the kitchen once and asked him about his mother, and had listened when he answered. Callum came to the paddock last. He stood at the gate. Vivienne looked at him over Silva's neck. "Are you ready?" he asked. Yes, she said. She kissed Silver's forehead. She walked to the gate. He offered her his arm. She took it. They walked to the chapel together. At the door of the chapel before they went in, she paused. She looked up at him. Callum, she said, I need to say one thing. Yes, on the first day, she said. You said a strong wind might carry me off. He winced. He had not forgotten. I want you to know, she said, that a strong wind did try. Many of them, in fact, long before I ever came to Ashcombe, and none of them could. I want you to know that I did not need you to rescue me from any of them. I want you to know that I am here because I chose to be here, not because I had nowhere else to go, not because I was carried, because I chose. He looked down at her. His hazel eyes were steady. I know, he said. I know it now. I did not know it then. Thank you for saying it. She nodded. They went into the chapel. The neighbourhood was there. Every family who had been at the assembly at Ash Green was there. Lady Peveril was there, and she wept. Mrs. Penhale sat in the front pew and pretended not to. The little maid Betsy, who had once been thanked in a hallway, sat beside her. Lady Corvin was not there. She had not been invited. She had gone to Bath and had not been seen in the county since. It was said she had married a wine merchant of middle age. It was said she was not happy. Vivienne, when told, had felt only a small sadness for her, and no triumph. That, Callum said, was one of the reasons he loved her. The vows were spoken. Rings were exchanged. Callum did not stumble on the words. Vivienne did not either. When they walked out of the chapel together, into the spring light, Silver was standing at the paddock fence, watching them, her one visible eye bright. They did not have a great ball at Ashcombe that night. Vivienne had not wanted one. They had a quiet dinner, with only the closest neighbours, and afterwards Callum and Vivienne walked in the rose garden by lantern light. The roses had been tended. They were coming into first bloom. The smell of them was thick and sweet on the evening air. Vivienne, he said as they walked. Yes? There is something I never told you, about the day you came to the paddock. The first day, when Silver put her head on your shoulder. Yes? He was quiet a moment. He was choosing his words. When I came round the corner and saw the two of you, I thought for the smallest second that you were my mother. I do not know why. My mother has been gone for 12 years. You look nothing like her. She was small and dark. You are, you. But for one heartbeat I thought it was her. Standing there, with that horse, and I understood, in the same heartbeat, that I had missed her every day for 12 years and had not let myself know it. And then I understood that I did not want to miss anyone the way I had missed her. Not ever again. Vivienne stopped walking. She looked at him in the lantern light. His face was open in a way she had not seen it before. Callum, she said softly. That is why, he said. That is why I came around the paddock so quietly. That is why I could not speak at first. I was trying not to weep in front of you, in front of my servants, in front of the horse, because a duke does not weep in the yard. I did not think you should know then, but I think you should know now. She reached up. She put her hand against his cheek. His cheek was warm. You are not alone any more, Callum. Neither of us is. He turned his face into her palm. He closed his eyes. They stood in the rose garden a while longer. The lantern burned. The garden smelled of roses and of the earth, and of the promise of the summer to come. Somewhere in the paddock, Silver moved in her sleep, and lifted her head, and looked toward the house, and put her head down again. A year passed. The house grew warmer. The neglected rooms of Ashcombe came back to life, one by one. The rose garden bloomed as no one at Ashcombe remembered it blooming. The tenants on the estate spoke of the new Duchess in a way that meant they were proud she was theirs. Silver, in the paddock, grew round and glossy. She let the head groom near her at last, though she would let him only saddle her, never mount her. She would let no one but Vivienne ride her, ever. She lived in the end, to a very great age for a mare. One winter evening, a year after the wedding, Vivienne came into the library. There was a fire. There was a book left open on the small table. There was a low chair drawn up to the fire, and in it Callum sat, with a small, dark-haired child asleep against his chest. The child was 3 months old. His name was Emrys. He had his father's hazel eyes. He had his mother's steady mouth. Callum looked up when Vivienne came in. He did not smile fully. He was still not the kind of man who smiled fully. But his eyes changed when he saw her. Every time. Even now, when she had been gone from the room only 10 minutes, his eyes changed. She came to him. She sat on the low stool by his feet. She put her hand on the baby's small, warm back. He slept, Callum said quietly. As soon as I sat down. He knows you, she said. He put his other hand over hers. Both their hands, and the child's small back, and the warmth of the fire and the smell of wood smoke, and outside the frost on the paddock and the great grey mare in the shed, and the whole quiet house holding them in the palm of the winter night. Vivienne, he said. Yes, no one trusted her, you know. Silver, not one man in 3 counties. And she walked up to you. She rested her head on your shoulder. I know. I think of it sometimes when I do not know how I came to be so fortunate. I think of that morning. I think of Silver looking at you across that paddock and knowing something I did not know. And I think, perhaps she was not the first to know. No? No. I think I knew. I think I saw you in the great hall on the day you came, with your small trunk. And I knew. And it frightened me, and I said something cruel to make it stop, because I did not want to know it, because I did not want to owe anything to anyone ever again. But it did not stop. It only waited. She saw what I would not let myself see. And you saw her. And I am grateful, every day, that you did. Vivienne did not answer at once. She put her cheek against his knee. She felt the small, warm breath of the baby. She felt the low, steady beat of Callum's heart under her hand. I am grateful too, she said. They sat in the firelight for a long time, saying nothing more. Thank you for staying with this story until the very end. If this moved you, please like, share and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive.